Jean-Roch Coignet's memoirs offer a vivid account of his life as a soldier under Napoleon Bonaparte. The Treaties of Tilsit has been signed and the war with Russia is over. Let's begin. We left Schönbrunn for the second time. Upon reaching the Confederation of the Rhine, we were received as if in our own country. In France, in the large cities, people came out to meet us. We were welcomed in our lodgings with friendliness. At the gates of Paris, we encountered a crowd impossible to count. We could barely pass by section due to the press of people. We were immediately taken to the Champs-Élysées, where a cold meal was provided by the city of Paris. The weather was a hindrance. We had to eat and drink standing up before heading to Courbevoie. This good city of Paris gave us a second meal under the galleries of Place Royale and a comedy show at Porte Saint-Martin. Triumphal arches were erected, and the people of Paris were overjoyed to see us again. Unfortunately, many were missing, having been left on the battlefields of Essling and Wagram. However, no one was happier than I to return to Paris with sergeant stripes, carrying a sword, a cane, and wearing silk stockings in the summer. Yet I was troubled by one thing. I had no calves. I had to resort to false calves, which bothered me. After a 15-day rest in the beautiful barracks of Courbevoie, newly dressed, we were reviewed by the Emperor at the Tuileries. Preparations were underway for the burial of Marshal Lannes. 100,000 men formed the cortège for the famous warrior, departing from Gros Caillou to reach the Pantheon. I was among the non-commissioned officers who carried him. We were 16 to lower him down 8 or 10 steps on the left side of the Pantheon wing, where we laid him on trestles. The entire army filed past the remains of this good warrior. This lasted until midnight. I resumed my duties as a non-commissioned officer, dedicating myself to writing. One day, while on guard at Saint-Cloud, I made a report on my 50 grenadiers, with all names neatly written, and delivered it myself to Mr. Belcourt, who was pleased with the clarity of my report. "Continue," he said. "You are saved." How hard I worked to learn my theory. I surpassed my comrades in the tone of command, and was noted for having the loudest voice. I was happy with my sergeant rank and 43 sous per day. Having essential visits to make, I dressed to the nines, needing silk stockings to wear with my sword. As I mentioned, I had passed through Saint-Malo, but had no calves, and had to use false ones. I went to the Palais Royal to procure them, paying 18 francs, which made my legs presentable with fine stockings over the false calves and silk stockings on top. I made the obligatory visits and was showered with compliments on my good appearance. I returned to the barracks at 9 in the evening, satisfied with my day, and found a letter from my captain, Renard, inviting me to dine at his house on Sunday at precisely 5 o'clock, as his wife and daughter wanted to thank me for having made him sleep in a barrel on the night of the Battle of Austerlitz. I accepted the invitation, finding there distinguished military men, bourgeois, and high-born ladies. I was uneasy around my superiors, all decorated, and such beautiful ladies with plumes. I felt small in this grand setting awaiting dinner. My captain came to my rescue, introduced me to his wife, the ladies, and his friends. No longer isolated but still very timid, I would have preferred my pension to this grand dinner. We moved to the dining room where I was seated between 2 beautiful ladies who seemed pleased to be away from their husbands and engaged me, putting me at ease. At the second course, everyone became cheerful, and champagne completed the gaiety. My superiors began recounting their campaigns, and the ladies teased them about their conquests among foreign women. The commander, still a bachelor, entertained us with tales of Viennese and Berlin ladies, always maintaining decorum, which charmed the company. I was then pressed by the 2 ladies beside me to tell my story. "I beg your pardon. My superiors know it," I said. The captain intervened. "I will tell it for him. You will see he is a good soldier. He was the first to be decorated at Les Invalides. He saved us from starving in Poland by finding all the Poles' hiding places. Without him, I would have died." I was overwhelmed by my captain's testimony and showered with kindness by everyone. Overheated, I kept wiping my face with a white handkerchief, accidentally using my fine napkin instead, which I pocketed. When I was ready to leave the barracks, the captain noticed, "You are leaving?" "Yes, captain. I am on guard duty tomorrow." "But you will come again tomorrow." "That is not possible. I am on guard duty. But you are taking your napkin." Reaching into my pocket, I found both the napkin and my handkerchief. Returning the napkin, I said, "I thought I was still in enemy territory. If one takes nothing, one feels they have forgotten something. Stay, I will send my servant to the barracks, and you will spend the evening with us." Pointing to his daughter, he added, "Here is your informant who said, 'Papa, he is taking the napkin, but let him be.' How fortunate I was to be seen by your daughter." I returned to the Capuchin barracks near Place Vendôme. The next morning I received a letter from Madame A, asking me to visit her at 11 o'clock. This thrilled me, and I arranged for a comrade to cover my guard duty, dressed smartly, and took a cab to the address. I can say I was filled with excitement, appropriate for my age. Upon arrival I was announced, and the chambermaid led me to her mistress in a beautiful salon, where I was received by one of the two ladies who had sat next to me at the captain's, now in an alluring disarray. I was overwhelmed and speechless. She took my arm and led me to her bedroom, where all sorts of refreshments awaited, sweet wine and every conceivable comfort. This is how she began with me. The conversation turned to her intentions towards me. She confessed she had set her sights on me, but could not entertain me at her house. "If you suit me, I will give you an address where we will meet 3 times a week. I attend the opera, and at that place a room will be ready. Upon alighting from my carriage, I will join you for the evening. I will not fail. Have someone cover your guard duty at all costs. I will pay." She pressed me with wine and sweets. Her enticing manners indicated I needed to reciprocate. Seizing one of her hands, I said, "You can count on me." Leading me to a chaise longue, I had to prove my worth. She showed me her magnificent bed with mirrors on the ceiling, and around, a sight I had never seen. She seemed pleased with me. I spent a delightful day with this beautiful lady, and left in time for the roll call. My legs trembled slightly from the eventful day, but I was content with my conquest, and did not miss our next appointment. I found my dinner served by the charming maid, who stayed to assist her mistress. I dined like a spoiled child, with a cold meal. "And you, mademoiselle, do you not dine?" "Yes, sir, after you, if you please. Madame is very pleased with you. She will come early to have coffee and spend the evening with you. Eat well and drink heartily. It is Bordeaux. Here is some sugar. It will taste better. Thank you. I will prepare Madame for bed so she will be comfortable, and return to help her dress again when she returns to the hotel. That will suffice." Madame arrived at 8 o'clock, saying after the usual pleasantries, "Go fetch the coffee." We were alone. I approached her. "Well," she said, "we are spending the evening together. I know, Madame. Stay in your place." Coffee was served immediately. After taking it, she said, "Go to that room, I will call you." I went out and sat, awaiting my fate. I was told to enter Madame's room, where she awaited me in bed. Well, I thought, I am caught. "Come sit in this chair near me. Do you have 24-hour leave?" "Yes, Madame." She gave orders to her maid, and dismissed her until the next morning, instructing her to bring coffee and prepare Madame. I was in a bind about undressing, needing to hide my accursed false calves and 3 pairs of stockings. I wanted to extinguish the candle to rid myself of them. I shoved them under the pillow as discreetly as possible, but it dampened my spirits. The next morning, getting dressed was a torment. Luckily, my lady rose first, relieving my embarrassment, and went to her dressing room with her maid. I wasted no time, jumped out of bed, dressed, and put on my 3 pairs of stockings without mishap, except on one leg, but Madame did not notice. A hairdresser was needed to fix my head. I was asked if I was dressed. "Tell Madame I am ready to present myself. I am at her service." Madame appeared fresh and beautiful, and we had chocolate tête-à-tête. After settling matters, she left with her maid, and I returned to the barracks a bit dishevelled. A comrade said, "You have a stocking crooked. It looks like a false calf." "True," I said, embarrassed. "I will rid myself of it immediately." Back in my room, I undressed and removed the cursed calves that had tortured me for 24 hours. I never wore them again. I continued to see my beautiful and witty lady on the designated days, but the task was too much for my strength, and I had met my match, needing to retreat. She provided an excuse. I received a letter asking to see my writing. I had to respond to the given address. Embarrassed, barely able to write, I did my best. My letter did not meet her expectations, and she scolded me for my lack of education. "I did not find in your letter what I desired," she said. "No orthography, little style." I immediately replied, "Madame, I deserve your reproach and accept it. If you want a perfect letter, I will write the 25 letters of the alphabet with all the points and commas needed for a letter worthy of you. Place them where they are missing, and you will have made up for my shortcomings." I never wanted to see her again. Her pleas were in vain. Freed from my beautiful conquest, I dedicated myself relentlessly to my writing and theories for 6 months, only leaving the barracks for guard duty, always carrying my battalion schoolbook to learn the manoeuvres relevant to my rank. I overcame all practical difficulties. The Emperor ordered manoeuvres for non-commissioned officers and corporals alone, using poles to represent sections. For platoon formation, the section man held both ends of each pole. For breaking, the corporal took his pole end. This was called pole manoeuvring, providing rest for all the grumblers. Mr. Belcourt commanded us, and we made significant progress, marching in the beautiful courtyard of Courbevoie barracks. With 100 men, we conducted grand manoeuvres like a full regiment. The Emperor had us form a square. After an hour-long manoeuvre, he was satisfied and ordered it be done only twice a week. All sergeants and corporals had to command. When my turn came, I was eager to show my superiors the progress I had made. They watched me closely to see if I would err. During rest, I was surrounded by all my comrades, and my superiors expressed their satisfaction. But while the Emperor was pleased with us, we were not pleased with him. It was rumoured among the guard that he was divorcing his wife to marry an Austrian princess as compensation for the costs of the Second War with the Austrian Emperor, seeking a successor to the throne. To do so, he had to dismiss the accomplished woman and take a foreigner who promised general peace. The Emperor held grand reviews to distract himself from his troubles. We were told Prince Berthier was going to Vienna to present our Emperor's portrait to the princess and request her hand, marrying her before bringing her, and he would lie with her before presenting her to his sovereign. Knowing no more, I thought, he is fortunate to lie first. I wish I were in his place. My captain laughed. Everything was in motion to receive the new empress. On the 15th, her family escorted her a great distance from Vienna. She regretted leaving her dog and parrot. Orders were given, and she was surprised upon arriving at Saint-Cloud to find her cage, birds, beloved dog recognizing its mistress, and parrot calling her name. Our 1st Battalion was ordered to Saint-Cloud to await the Emperor's arrival. Couriers arrived, and we were armed. We saw this beautiful carriage, with 8 horses, and the Emperor beside his betrothed, looking happy. They climbed Saint-Cloud at a slow pace, giving us time to see all the splendid carriages. They were married civilly at Saint-Cloud. The next day they departed to enter the capital. We were ordered to attend the grand religious wedding ceremony, celebrated on April 5th in the Louvre Chapel. The preparations were unimaginable. In the Louvre's Grand Gallery, from the old Louvre to the chapel at the Tuileries Pavilion towards Pont Royal, a vast distance, there were 3 rows of benches for ladies and gentlemen. In the 4th row were 50 decorated non-commissioned officers spaced apart in iron circles to avoid being jostled. General d'Orsens commanded us. After positioning us, he informed the ladies we were their knights to provide refreshments. Introductions were necessary. We had 24 on each side, 48 per non-commissioned officer, to respond to their requests. Large niches in the thick wall held 96 canteens for all desirable refreshments. These mobile cafes were well received. Here was the ladies' attire, low-cut dresses at the back to mid-back, and the front showing half their chests, bare shoulders and arms. Necklaces, bracelets and earrings abounded, rubies, pearls and diamonds. Here one could see skin tones of all shades, oily skins, mulatto skins, yellow skins, and satin skins. The older women had scent boxes. I can say I had never seen Parisian ladies up close, half exposed. It was not beautiful. The men were dressed in French fashion, all in the same attire, black coat, short breeches, and diamond-cut steel buttons. Their outfit trimmings cost 1,800 francs. They could not present themselves at court without this attire. Cabs were banned that day. The number of splendid carriages around the Tuileries was unimaginable. The grand ceremony departed from the chateau to the old Louvre, climbed the grand staircase to the Tuileries chapel. The ceremony was imposing. Everyone stood in the most reverent silence. The procession moved slowly. Once past, General d'Orsay regrouped us, led us to the chapel, and formed a circle. We saw the Emperor kneeling on a bee-embroidered cushion with his wife beside him, receiving the blessing. After crowning themselves, they sat on chairs, and Mass began, said by the Pope. The generals signalled us to return to our posts, where we saw the ceremony return. The new Empress was beautiful under her diadem. The wives of our marshals carried her train, trailing 8 or 10 steps behind, proud to have such ladies of honour, though one could say she was a beautiful sultana, and the Emperor seemed content, his face gracious. That day, everything was rosy, but it was not the same at Malmaison. The old guard was under arms to protect the procession, and we were all famished. We received 25 sous and a litre of wine each. After the celebrations, the Emperor departed with Marie-Louise. On June 1st, they returned to Paris, and the city offered a splendid feast and banquet at the Hôtel de Ville. I was on duty, commanding a 20-man detachment inside, facing the horseshoe-shaped table, with my 20 grenadiers at the foot of the table. Around the horseshoe, chairs, the grand one in the middle marked the Emperor's place. The procession was announced. The general placed me and gave instructions. The master of ceremonies announced the Emperor. He appeared with his wife and 5 crowned heads. I ordered to present arms, then to rest. I stood before my platoon facing the Emperor. He sat first and signalled others to join him. Once seated, the table was cleared, everything removed and disappeared, carvers at work in an adjacent room. Behind each king or queen stood 3 footmen, 1 step apart. Others coordinated with the carvers, passing plates with a half turn. If the sovereign shook their head, the plate vanished, replaced by another. If the head remained still, the footman placed the plate before their master. The pieces were perfectly carved. Each took a small bread, broke it, and bit directly, never using a knife, and used their napkin to wipe their mouth after each bite. The napkin disappeared, replaced by another. Thus, behind each figure was a pile of napkins used only once. No word was spoken. Each had a flask of wine and water, and no one poured for their neighbour. They bit their bread and poured themselves drinks as they wished. Accepting or declining was done with head gestures. Speech was only permitted when the sovereign master addressed his neighbour. Though imposing, it was not cheerful. The Emperor rose. I ordered to present arms and all moved to a grand salon. I remained near the fine service. The general took me by the arm. "Sergeant, come with us. I will have you drink the Emperor's wine, and your 20 men will also get wine. Sit there. I will go attend to your platoon and have them refreshed." Those 2 glasses of wine did me good, and my grenadiers were each served a half-litre. They were pleased to drink the Emperor's wine. After a few days of rest, the old guard gave a brilliant fête for the Emperor at Champ de Mars. The entire court attended. Manoeuvres were executed before them, and in the evening, with torches, we were given fireworks cartridges of all colours. After performing air volleys, we formed a square before the grand balcony of the École Militaire, where the court watched us. At the signal, this immense square began its file, firing into the air, forming an unparalleled flower basket. The guard was crowned with stars. Everyone applauded. I can say it was magnificent. The Emperor and his court left for Saint-Cloud. He enjoyed it because there was game of all kinds, deer and especially gazelles, a finer, more delicate animal. The Emperor liked taking his wife to the upper gate parterre each evening. I was there by chance. Seeing them, I wanted to leave, but at the Emperor's sign I stepped aside to let them pass. The gazelles galloped towards their majesties. These animals loved tobacco, and the Emperor always had a little box ready for them. Not quick enough to give it to the first buck, it lowered its head under his wife's dress, showing me her white linens. The Emperor, furious, lost his temper, and I withdrew, embarrassed, though this memory still pleases me. The charming animals were forgiven, but the Emperor thereafter brought tobacco alone. The Emperor gave a magnificent ball, opening it with Marie-Louise. No one was better shaped than the Emperor. One could say he was a true model, unmatched in feet and hands. Marie-Louise excelled at billiards, beating all the men, unafraid to stretch like a man on the table when needed to make her shot. And I, always watchful. She was often applauded. Service at Saint-Cloud was demanding for us, travelling from Courbevoie to Saint-Cloud, and hunters came from Rouet to relieve us. But we were well fed, and the sergeant served alone. Soup, boiled meat, good chicken, salad, bottle of fine wine. The officer dined at the officers' mess. This concludes the 7th part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please consider subscribing for more episodes.